The faint crackle and pop of melting ice drifts through the speakers. It hisses and sighs as age-old glaciers dissolve into the sea. These are the sounds that artist Jana Winderen has dedicated her career to recording and sharing with the world.
Started to listening to glaciers, and I realized that, it's like a sort of massive alive organism.
Jana wades through frigid waters with hydrophones in hand, patiently waiting to capture the voices of creatures and environments. She transforms these disappearing sounds into haunting music. This week, we are going off the radar to explore the work of Jana Winderen and how she uses sound to convey the gravity of climate change. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie, and you're listening to Off the Radar, a production of the National Weather Desk. On the show, we dig deep into topics about weather, climate, the ocean, space, and much more. Our goal is to help you better understand the weather and to love it as much as we do. A study out of Alaska a few years back showed that melting glaciers emit surprisingly loud noises, comparable to the volume of under the sea during heavy rainstorms. And this is why. As glaciers thaw, pressurized ancient air bubbles escape into the water, creating a persistent year-round noise. This phenomenon, documented by underwater sensors at glacier sea junctions, resembles radiostatic or white noise. Contrary to prior belief, the noise isn't from bubbles rising or popping, but rather from bubbles reforming after being compressed for millennia. Jana Winderen is a Norwegian artist who unveils hidden audio environments. With backgrounds in mathematics, chemistry, and fish ecology, she focuses on sounds beyond human reach, deep underwater, inside ice, or even inaudible frequencies. Jana's audio art includes site-specific installations and spatial concerts exhibited globally. Her work brings to light soundscapes concealed by the human ear, immersing audiences in the secret songs of unseen worlds. Here's my conversation with Jana. And so I want to find out from you how you got started doing this and if you've always been an artist.
Yes, I have always been interested in how we are as, humans together with the other creatures we share the planet with, since I was a child, and particularly interested in also what's happening underwater. And I wanted to become a marine biologist, so I studied math, chemistry, fish ecology, actually. But I changed, and after about 4 years, and started to study art, and started recording sound back in 1992. I guess about 20 years ago, I started to listening to glaciers. And I realized that, it's like a sort of massive, alive organism, Because first time I was up in Iceland, recording there with my 2 daughters at the time. They were quite small. And we walked up to this glacier, Vatnajökull. And I put my hydrophones, close to the glacier, and also the little small microphones inside the glacier itself. And it was this massive rumble sound that I heard. But I thought this what? This is like some tractor. This is some trucks around here. It sounded like that. And this is then I realized, no, it's the glacier itself that makes this sound, So this is when I really started to, I got totally fascinated by listening inside of the ice of the glaciers. Also, around the same time I started recording glaciers and ice, I also became aware of how much fish are making sound too.
Interesting. So you said as a kid, you spent a lot of time in the water. Does it sound different when you're recording it on your devices as opposed to like just a kid going underwater and hearing stuff when you're just underwater?
Yes. Our ears are not very well adapted to listening underwater. We have developed, from our really, really long time ago, from underwater creatures, which had, water adapted hearing. But then, slowly it evolved into being able to listen above water when the creatures moved on to land. You needed to hear the predators. So our hearing is best adapted for listening in air. But I think we have kind of a bit forgotten that all these creatures are making sounds, because, we are also making so much sounds as human beings that we are not hearing the small creatures, because they get totally, masked by engine sounds and all other sounds that we put into the water. But if you are swimming, you can also, if you're lying still, you can start to hear the crackling sounds, and divers will know that they hear all this crackling, popping, sounds. But of course, when you are diving, if you don't use a rebreather, you will make a lot of sound yourself by breathing. So it's not so easy to hear, over the bubbles that you make yourself. But if you're just holding the breath and listening, there is enormous soundscapes underwater, massive amount.
So you said you've been to Iceland and, of course, Norway. Where else have you traveled to record?
Yes, I've been traveling a lot, these last, 30 years. China, listening to and recording, grunts of fish there several times in Thailand, India, a lot, of course, in the Barents Sea. I've been several times north of Norway, and over to the borders to Russia, Greenland, several times the Caribbean, New York, and outside of New York, I was not so long ago recording around the humpback whale there, not only 1 hour away from New York.
I read that you've been to the North Pole. Is that true?
Yes, I have been to the North Pole.
What's it like at the North Pole?
The North Pole is actually was quite noisy. And I was hoping to get this kind of drift of snow, like the breeze, which was beautiful there. You have this massive, open, flat landscape of ice. And but the fact was, it was just like really noisy there, of people shouting and being so happy that they had reached the North Pole, because I was there then coming in with a helicopter to pick up these people, and they were just making a lot of noise. And also close to the camp, I was at the Borneo research camp, and of course there were like a lot of generators there, and it was like helicopter sounds. So it was really hard to get the sounds.
That's not as peaceful as I thought it was.
Yes, it was.
I definitely thought it was more isolated than that.
Yeah, no, but it was, of course, it was a research camp, and this is on the sea ice, and it's drifting, and it's not it's only there for a few months a year when the ice is thick enough. And of course, we're seeing now, I don't know how long it's going to be able to be there, with the melting.
Yeah, I was going to ask, if you've been doing this for more than 20 years, what have you witnessed in 2 decades? Because climate change is happening right now. So have you been back to the same places multiple times and seen the changes and heard the changes?
There was 10 years between 2 times I was in a research ship in the Barents Sea. And of course, now, the last time that I was there, the researchers on board were also saying they hadn't seen this low density of ice in the areas where it normally had more ice. So that was back in 2017, I think I was there last. And I had been there in 2007. So, of course, you can see these changes and things are happening quite fast. But I will also say that I was listening to stories from my grandfather, when I was a child, of which fish he was able to fish in the south coast of Norway. And, he told me about species that you don't see there anymore. So I think, when you start to talk about, talk with older generations, that will also tell stories about what it was like, and then you can really start to get a perspective of what's happening.
Your recordings, what do you do with them? Where do they go after you record?
I record, I kind of say that it starts, the composition process starts already while I'm out recording. I record I have to be very concentrated, and I listen very carefully when I have my hydrophones in the water. So I use very sensitive hydrophones, and I try to have them then at different depths in the water and floated away from the boat I'm on, so that it doesn't make too much sound of the slapping of the boat itself, so that I can really listen and concentrate listening to the small creatures. So I record as much as possible there in many, many, many files, of course, and often many days after each other. And then immediately I will be re-listening to everything and log it and write notes and make little sketches and comments to myself in my little sketchbook. And then I start to work with the recordings depending on where it will be, if I am going to make a concert with many speakers, or if I'm going to make an installation, like, for example, the one I did in New York with 90, we were the speakers all through the Park Avenue tunnel. And, this it will be different than, an installation in a gallery or, next to the sea. I was at the rowing stadium not so long ago, also with another setup. So, of course, how I work with it in the studio depends also where it's going to be shown or listened to.
Do you have musical training or sound editing training, or is this something you just kind of learned as you went through the process yourself?
I don't have training in composition or in, working with computers, but this I think kind of dove in on a deep end I had to kind of just figuring it out as I went along. And so I think it's just good to just dare diving in, even if you don't know it very well.
What are your goals when it comes to people listening to this? What do you hope they get out of it?
Well, I'm hoping that they can be inspired to ask questions and to, raise awareness of the importance of, for example, then, the sound for fish, the sound for crustaceans, and that we are considering this when we are moving in the ocean, and, and that we are actually, they are depending on hearing each other. And I think once you become aware that, a cod need to hear its mate to choose which is the good guy to go for or not, they need to listen to his sound, and they communicate together, with sound. So, for example, and if there's a massive engine or a boat engine passing, they won't be able to hear each other. So I'm hoping that, through making people aware, I just hope to inspire people, basically. I hope to to be asking questions and maybe even start to listen themselves.
Have you gotten any feedback from people, any stories that maybe surprised you or made you feel good?
Yeah, I think, somebody came up to me, it was at an opening, and they said, Jana, I really, I heard it. I listened, when I was swimming, because he had listened to my releases, so he recognized the sounds. So it's many good things. Kids love it, coming along, listening, putting the headphones on, and wow! I just had this guy saying to me so soothing listening to the water. I was like, wow. And like this sort of very gentle expression in the face, being curious and aware of, wow, this is like a whole world, you haven't thought about.
With your science background, is there any way to use what you've done artistically and bring that back to the science community to help them learn?
I think maybe because I have, I have recorded so much or so many places over so many years. And my impression is that it can be useful through my experience, talking with scientists that are working on the same, with the same issues. And we can exchange knowledge, a lot and exchange experiences.
In the U.S., when we think of climate change, a lot of times, especially in the southern U.S., we think of water, like rising water and elevated tides or extreme weather events. So I'm curious, in Norway, how is climate change affecting the people in Norway?
Yeah, I think we're seeing very much more unstable, like very fast shifts. So, for example, signs of how the weather is, and it doesn't sort of work anymore because it's just the shifts are much faster and stronger. There are more water around, so it's wetter in the area where I am now. It's the sort of inland just north of Oslo. It is much wetter than it used to be. I am really worried about this permafrost melting, that this is such a massive thing in the north, when you have really soil that has been frozen for thousands of years are now melting.
In your opinion and experience, what does climate change sound like?
If an area that you're expecting to have sound, like a lively, coral area, for example, where there should be loads of sounds of, fish, crustaceans, whales, dolphins. If these areas get quiet, that's very scary. So, to actually say what is the sound of climate change, well, that areas that should have lots of life get quiet. That's really worrying to me, and when we are losing species that we are not hearing anymore, that's worrying. And with the deep sea mining, there is soundscapes there that we haven't heard yet, or things we don't know, and they might be kind of quiet before we even knew it was there. And that's scary.
So the sound of climate change may be a lack of sound.
Yes.
You can listen to Jana's work by going to her website, janawinderen.com. That's JANAWINDEREN.com. She also has an artist page on Spotify. Now, speaking of Spotify, make sure you follow Off the Radar on Spotify or on Apple so you get notified of our new podcast episodes every Tuesday. If you know someone that's interested in art, sound, or climate change, please share this episode with them. Thank you to Jana Winderen for joining me today and sharing her work with all of us. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie. Make it a great day.